Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to UC Davis Continuing and Professional Education's Winemaking Information Session. My name is Pradeep Kandola, also known as Katie Kandola, and I will be your host today. I manage the online winemaking certificate program and the annual one-week program, OIV Wine Marketing. We are glad that you can join us today. UC Davis CPE has been supporting the wine industry by offering quality winemaking courses and programs for the last 50 years. Our goal today is to provide you with some information about the winemaking courses that are coming up and give you an opportunity to have any questions that you might have answered by those actually running these programs. We have a very packed schedule today, and I'm joined by three others of our winemaking staff. The first one is Julie Brinley, my colleague, program education specialist, who will talk about the upcoming wine short courses. Then we have Grady Wann, director for the Winemaking Certificate program, who will address the online winemaking certificate program and the prereq course, Basic Chemistry for Winemakers. We also have Christy Craig, enrollment coach, who will talk about her role and share her contact information. We also have with us three special guest panelists to provide their perspective. First one is Christian Miller, proprietor of Full Glass Research, who will talk about our annual one-week OIV wine marketing program. We have Jim Allen, alumni 2020 OIV program and graduate of winemaking certificate program. He will share his experience and students' perspective on the two programs. We also have John Bixtenstein, the winemaker and educator, who will give us an instructor's perspective on the winemaking certificate program courses. And we will share our agenda with you. We will first hear from Christian Miller about the OIV wine marketing program before getting Jim Allen's students' perspective on the program. Then we will have Julie, who will tell us about the upcoming winemaking short courses. And this will be followed by three perspectives on the winemaking certificate program. We will end with Christy's role as an enrollment coach. And we will also have a Q&A at the end of the session. So feel free to open the Q&A box during the presentations and type in your questions. And I will address them at the conclusion of the session. If we run out of time and do not address all asked questions, we apologize and will address them individually via email. I will now introduce our first panelist, Christian Miller, who will talk about the OIV wine marketing program. Christian Miller is an instructor and facilitator for the OIV program, and he has worked in the market research, brand, and category management for over 2 decades now. And he's a proprietor and director of Full Glass Research. Please welcome Christian Miller.
Thank you very much, and I hope everyone can see me and hear me. Okay, yes, I'm going to be giving a brief overview of what we hope to accomplish for our students in the OIV wine marketing program, and a little bit of background, plus some examples of what you'll actually be learning. This was founded 29 years ago by Jim Lapsley and Michel Bourqui, who was head of education at the Organisation Internationale de la Vigne et du Vin. For those who are not familiar with that, the OIV or OIV coordinates a lot of international legal, trade, and research issues on the subject of wine or grape growing. UC Davis, of course, as a leading institute in winemaking education, and OIV were a perfect match for this. And it functions as part of the OIV master's degree program, as well as being a class offered independently by the UC Davis Extension Service. The emphasis in this course is on practical knowledge over academic or theoretical. For example, how are prices and margins actually set and decided upon by wholesalers and retailers, and what's common versus unusual, rather than doing more of an abstract economic pricing theory. The entire marketing process is covered, from the producer, for instance, the custom crush versus own production facility decision or packaging, all the way down through the distribution system to the consumer. Speakers are all accomplished leaders and experts from the industry in their particular specialty. So they cover topics and issues that they themselves have to work on every day. And I add, they've been very generous with their time in terms of answering student questions off of time or giving them recommendations after the course. Students themselves are from all kinds of geographies and backgrounds. There's almost always a significant international segment, and as well as people from across the US. The most typical, oh wait, let's go back a moment. Thank you. The most typical type of student is people in the wine industry looking to move horizontally, for instance, from a tasting room manager into the marketing department. People outside the industry who are looking for a job or planning on investing in the industry, and producers in the industry planning to become more vertical. For example, a grower planning to add a winery. Typically a quarter to a third international and OIV students, and networking is encouraged. We have an active alumni network on LinkedIn as well as Facebook. I'm just going to run very quickly through, this is the agenda here, and I'm not going to stop and describe every single course or lecture in it, but you can see how it progresses from background information on the history and geography of wine in the US, definitions and concepts. The language of wine marketing and wine selling is very important to understand. Regulation licensing on how you can get licensed to sell wine and how, and a general state of the industry. The second day, Tuesday, July 20th, is on the next slide. And that is just, we start to go back into the background of consumers and trends and how we measure them. We're going to talk a little bit about the green market and how you handle media, how importers work and how importing works, and another big picture lecture on what people get wrong about marketing wine in America. Day 3, Wednesday, we start to talk about what goes into producing a new brand. That includes taste, sensory, the custom crush option, private labels, trends in consumer wine purchase, package design, legal restrictions on labels, and launching a new brand. Thursday, we move down into the distribution system. So we talk about how to actually execute wine pricing, how to market and distribute, what you can do and not do to promote your brand with distributors and retailers. How do you work with a small distributor? How do you work with a large distributor? How do you use fact-based marketing and sales management? And the last day, we're down at the retail level where the wine is actually sold to the consumer, and we'll hear from managers of fine wine shops, how to run a tasting room, digital retail and website management, off-premise sales, chains, selling to restaurants, etc. And that wraps up the course. So you've gone all the way through the distribution system. I'm just going to give you a very quick look at a few slides to give you an idea of some of the content. We can just go through these slides quickly. For instance, we'll be talking about what is a winery in terms of both physically and, more importantly, from your point of view, licenses. What kind of licenses can do what activities? What kind of licenses are needed to do custom crush, etc. We also, next slide, we also get a lot. You get a lot of numbers on the scale and size and trends in the U.S. wine industry. This is from BW 166, showing the long-term evolution of the wine industry. Next slide. You'll be seeing getting research and quantitative numbers on the consumer. How it breaks down overall, as well as different types of wine consumers. Next slide. We'll be talking about sensory, not in a more applicable rather than sort of a research-driven academic background, but just talk about how you can, different types of consumers have different flavor preferences, and how you measure this and how you assess where you want to be and whether your who your wine appeals to. Next slide. A lot of time is spent on exactly how distribution works in the US, a very mysterious topic. And so, there are many paths to the consumer. You don't have to take all of them. You may specialize in one. And what you want to learn is how to make each one work best for you, depending on which one you're in. Next slide. I will go into the details of pricing. This is just a very small taste, but we'll be providing spreadsheets and formulas and the like to help you understand how your pricing decisions end up on the shelf. And next slide. We can just click through this, but basically this is a slide that illustrates rather crudely the depletion allowance, which is one of the key tools in pricing when dealing in the three-tier system and with wholesalers. And next slide. We'll be talking about where wine sells and what type of wine sells and what type of account. And this one is just a typical illustration of, the share of wine sales by the different trade channels: food, grocery stores versus drugstores versus fine wine shops and the like. And you can see how it varies depending on the price point of the wine. And on to the next one. And that brings us to, okay, there we go. This one is talking about how you want to construct your website and what the differences are in terms of costs and features. And that's included in our digital marketing section. So with that, we're going to get to Jim Allen, one of our former students, and who has very nicely agreed to donate his time and give you a sort of a student perspective on how well this all works. He was one of the very first, our first class of online version of the OIV wine marketing program, and which had some interesting features. It was a learning experience for all of us, but it turned out that some of the features of it worked even better than the live version. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim, and he can tell you all about it.
Christian, thank you very much. Christian, I'm kind of disappointed that you didn't share with the aspiring students. One of the most important things we learn is the value of hats in the industry, and it's one of the things in the program. There were a lot of hat wearing going on in the virtual session, but
there's an ongoing competition between Tim McDonald and I on most stylish hats, both probably owing to our lack of fur on top. So
yeah, well, Mr. Blackwell will be proud. You're a fashion thought leader, so I appreciate that as well. But no, just quickly for the benefit of those on the call, I'm a 30-year banker and businessman, and I have a technology background. I have an MBA, and I'll tell you, the wine industry is unlike any other. It's many of you may know this already, but it's an agricultural product, but it's not necessarily a commodity. It's a regulated, business, but it's regulated by the state. And therefore, when you look at things in regional or national terms, and internationally, it can get complicated very quickly. And it's also, it's not a commodity. Branding is essential in terms of driving margins and engaging your clientele. This program, this week-long program, was a spectacular introduction to all of these elements. The three-tier system, how to take advantage of that. Christian talked about the regulatory nature of the industry and how important the licensing is, and the different types of licensing, and the choices that you're confronted with as you either enter or grow in this industry. And then the people, the instructors, in terms of their insights in growing the business, in creating brand, in growing that brand, and with it the margins that go along. I was really impressed. I had seen a breakdown of the agenda before joining, but I was very impressed, not only with the level of instruction and not only the volume of information, but also by the classmates. And just to wrap things up, Christian talked about it being an international program, and it was fascinating to go around and introduce ourselves and have a young lady, introduce herself as being from Georgia, the state, and then the gentleman who followed introduced himself as being from Georgia, the country. And then the next woman was actually zooming in from the balcony of her apartment in Malta, and so it goes around the world. And to hear their perspectives on winemaking, on distribution and sales, on entering the U.S. market, as well as accepting entrance into their markets from the U.S. So I would summarize it as saying it's a very comprehensive course. It is a rigorous course. You're introduced to the leaders in several aspects of the industry, and it certainly exceeded my expectations.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Christian. I hand it back to the next presenter.
Thank you, Christian and Jim. You will hang around until the end of the session so that any of the questions that the students have can be answered.
Happy to.
Indeed.
Yeah. And now I'd like to introduce Julie Brinley, who will talk about the summer short courses being offered at CPE.
Hi, everyone. As Katie said, I'm Julie Brinley, and I am the professional education specialist for the short courses in viticulture and enology. We have several summer short courses, and they will be remote. Fingers crossed that by fall we will be offering courses in person. All of our courses this summer will be taught by our wonderful, wonderful instructor, Leticia Chacon Rodriguez. She is the UC Davis research winemaker, and she is fabulous. We have been offering these courses for winemakers and viticulturists and other industry professionals for over 50 years. Like I said, current situation, in-person classes, fingers crossed for fall, but these summer courses will be remote, and Leticia does a fabulous job. Next slide. Our first class will be wine filtration. It will be held June 8th through the 10th. The learning outcomes for this class will be understanding common issues in wine filtration, select filtration systems for particular applications, exploring pre-filtration treatments to enhance filterability, and practice microbiological detection strategies. The skills you will gain will be wine filtration, pre-filtration systems, and filtration systems for various applications. We will also be offering this class in a Spanish version from June 29th through July 1st. Next slide. Our next class will be Successful Home Winemaking, July 8th through the 9th. The learning outcomes for this class will be understanding the steps and processes of home wine production, discover the basics of fermentation theory, yeast, and starter cultures. You'll learn to differentiate white and red wine production and common problems in the process, and you will gain an overview of the proper equipment, cleaning agents, and sanitation practices in home wine production. The skills you will gain home winemaking, wine sanitation, and fermentation theory. Next slide. The next class, we have offered this class for years as one class for 2 days. And we've decided this year to split it up into 2 parts, kind of a basic step-by-step winemaking, and then the second, more an advanced class. So the first part will be on July 22nd. And in both, you'll gain practical understanding of the winemaking process. You'll learn how to analyze and prepare juice, must, understand the fermentation process and how to control it. You'll explore fining agents and filtration methods and learn about aging process. The skills you'll gain, must analysis and preparation, wine fermentation, wine filtration. The second part will be held August 11th through the 12th. And again, you'll gain a practical understanding of the winemaking process, understand color and phenolic extractions for reds and rosés, explore the practical application of yeast and enzymes in fermentation, review how fining agents impact clarification, examine the details of wine aging and stability, learn about closures and bottling procedures. You will learn skills you'll gain: wine fermentation, wine aging, and wine bottling. Next slide. So again, fingers crossed, in-person fall courses. The dates are to be determined, but we're hoping to offer accounting and finance for the vineyard and winery, small vineyard management course, which I know everybody is clamoring for. It's very popular, and current issues in vineyard health. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Julie. Next, we will shift to the winemaking certificate program. And I would like to introduce Grady Wann, the program director, and the instructor, who will give you an overview of the program.
Thanks, Katie. My name is Grady Wann, and I've been the program director for the Winemaking Certificate program for the last 13 years, and also instructed most of the courses. And the Winemaking Certificate program is a series of courses that's geared around learning the science behind the art of winemaking. It was designed as a series of courses for those that are interested in commercial wine production, but it may also be useful to anybody that's either in or wants to be in the wine industry and is intrigued by the science of winemaking. The important thing is that this program is based on the UC Davis Viticulture and Enology program on campus. That's a very science-based curriculum, and it was our goal to try to condense the program on campus to something that was a little bit more manageable for our remote learning folks, because most of our students are either already in the wine business and looking for some additional technical knowledge, or would like to be in the wine business in the future. One of the main attributes of our program is the access that it gives you to quality instructors. All the instructors that teach in the program have extensive commercial winemaking experience. I think the average tenure of winemaking experience of instructors has to be greater than 25 years. And the ability to be able to engage with these instructors and to be able to find out how the scientific, theoretical, academic knowledge actually plays out in a real world winery situation is probably one of the most important attributes of the certificate program. Also, I must say, because of the diverse nature of our student body, a lot of the students are already working in the industry, as I said, and come from all over the world. So there's a very rich peer-to-peer learning that happens between students in the program. And although it's extended over a number of courses and there's not really a cohort, so you don't exactly stay together, these students tend to get to know each other and learn quite a bit from each other and their experiences around the world. This is a 100% online program, so it can be accessed anywhere in the world that you have a good internet connection. And it has a somewhat flexible course path. We do try to work with you and your schedule. We realize that you may not be able to put your life on hold and be able to take courses every quarter. And in fact, the courses are not necessarily offered every quarter, but it does provide an opportunity to hopefully get the courses that you want in the time frame that you desire. Also, I just mentioned at the bottom, there's tremendous networking opportunities. At the end of every class, I think the students share emails and often get together in their respective winemaking regions. So just a couple of thoughts about what you may learn through the program. It is a systematic and scientific approach to winemaking and grape growing, especially as it impacts stylistic decisions. So it's not a how-to course, it's not a step-by-step telling you what to do, but it does tell you what aspects of the winemaking process are important in the developing of a wine style. Obviously, we'll look at the principles of analytical chemistry and microbiology, look at how the analysis impacts quality winemaking. We also have a viticulture for winemakers course because most of us know that great wines start in the vineyard, and often, especially in a small winery setting like I was familiar with, the winemaker often gets the responsibility of quality over the vineyard situation, even if we don't necessarily have a lot of viticultural training. Also, we looked at major faults in wine, especially having to do with stability issues. So as I mentioned earlier, basically it's an attempt to prepare you for advancement if you're already in the wine industry, or provide you with a launching pad to get into the wine production world. So here are the 5 main courses in the program. There's an introduction to wine and winemaking and wine production, which my fellow instructor, John B., will give some perspective on in a minute. Then we have a quality control and analysis course, which also looks at microbiology. And as I mentioned, viticulture for winemaking, and then a wine stability and sensory analysis class. The intro and wine production class have to be taken first, but after the wine production course, the latter 3 courses can be taken in any order that fits your schedule. I should mention at the top, in order to get accepted into the winemaking certificate program, you need to have the equivalent of at least 1 semester of college chemistry. Because a lot of folks don't have that chemistry background. And in fact, I must say that the typical 1 semester of college chemistry doesn't get you to organic chemistry and biological chemistry, which is of course at the heart of wine chemistry, since wine is inherently an organic solution. We've created a basic chemistry for winemakers course. This is not a wine chemistry course per se. It's a basic foundational chemistry course, but it does go through the general chemistry up through atoms and molecules and bonding, up through acids and bases, but then introduces you to organic chemistry, where you get a chance to look at things like alcohols and sugars and a lot of the sensory components that are important to winemaking. So that is available to be used as a prerequisite. Just a summary here, it's 5 quarter-long courses, so they run 10 or 11 weeks per course. Generally, it takes about 24 months to complete, and the cost breakdown is given to you here. I should mention that the introductory course can be taken as a standalone wine appreciation course outside of the winemaking certificate. And with that, I'd like to introduce my longtime friend and fellow winemaker, John B., to give an instructor's perspective, since he's been teaching both the introductory course and the wine production course for many years now. Take it away, John.
Thank you, Grady. That was a terrific introduction to the program. I have a hat on, but I want you to know that this is not an entry in the value of hats contest. So Christian, take note of that. It would take a very special hat to upstage anything Tim McDonald might wear. Okay, so I'm going to take that off.
Very
and
true.
show you why I wear it. Okay. Thanks for tuning in today, everybody. I'm very happy that that Grady Wann just gave you all of the ins and outs of the program, which saves me a little bit of time. I've been a winemaker for over 30 years and been teaching in the UC Davis extension and CPE program now for, I won't say how long, but longer than that. And this is a fantastic program. The 2 classes that I'm mainly involved with are the Introduction to Wine and Winemaking and Wine Production. And those are the other than chemistry, those are the 2 first classes that you will take. So let's have a look at that first, the next slide, about the Introduction to Wine and Winemaking. I was thrilled to come in as an instructor many years ago in this particular class, because this is the class that I TA'd when I was in grad school for a whole year. Each semester, a different faculty member was the lecturer, but so I had to stay through the entire 3 classes. Very popular class on the UC Davis campus, attracting in those days 250 to 300 students. And I might add, everything was hand graded. I still have writer's cramp, but I was very popular because it was because Davis is known for winemaking, and also it qualified as a science class, as a sociology class, I believe as a geography class. This introductory class has so many aspects of it, but the idea is to get your feet wet in the world of wine. And our students are from everywhere and with all sorts of backgrounds. So basically, I think this first class kind of puts everybody on the same page in terms of the introduction of scientific topics and also the cultural aspects of where wine fits in the world. So I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes going through the week by week curriculum just to show you how widely we cover the world of wine. So next slide, please. So Dr. Lapsley gives a remarkable introductory lecture on the history of wine. And then we very quickly jump into the vineyard and talk about the types of grapes, the cultivars, the cépage that are used for making wine, and a bit of viticulture, growing wine grapes and so forth. This is to whet your appetite for things to come. The next week is deals with the microbiological winemakers, namely yeast and bacteria, and following that with winemaking operations. Go ahead. The winemaking unit operations, by the way, are things like receiving and crushing and pressing and transferring and so forth that can be mixed and matched in many different sequences to help to apply to all different styles or types of wine that you might make. So this next week we do a couple of a little more in-depth lectures on making table wines, still table wines, that is not bubbly. And then another lecture on making bubblies, making champagnes or sparkling wines. We wind up this first half of the class, the science half of the class, with a nice lecture by our faculty on sensory evaluation of wine. And then a very important topic. This was very, very important back when I was teaching this in grad school, the health effects of wine. We had a lot of younger students of all ages, but on campus, more younger students. So it was very important to, and very responsible, I think, to talk about alcohol metabolism and effects on behavior and so forth of wine. Very, very important. So after this first 6 weeks, the science half of the class, we jump into what we call the Grand World Tour. Please don't be offended if your country is not listed. But what we're trying to do here is deal with the classic Old World and some of the New World wine regions, starting out with France. We start with France because there are so many systems and procedures and unit operations in France that are used elsewhere in the world, not the least of which is their system of appellation d'origine contrôlée, or actually it's now called protégé, protected. And it's important to learn about that because the wines of many of these regions are based on the place that they're grown. In other words, the home terroir of the particular varieties. The variety is less important because the variety has been determined by hundreds of years of evolution and choice. So we start with AOC. Also, AOC or AOP is a system that has been adopted by many countries around the world. And so we'll review all of those different systems. By the way, even though we don't have live chats and Zoom sessions in this first introductory class, I am constantly lurking behind the scenes to answer your questions. And if any questions that you ask are of general interest, I will post an announcement with numerous little links that you can join to find out more about your favorite topics. So we'll jump from France over to Germany and Italy. And then we take a very large jump down to the Southern Hemisphere and look at New Zealand, Australia, South Africa. New world in some senses, although the South Africans say, we've been making wine for over 400 years here. Are we new world or are we really old world? Fun question. And then back up to Europe again, the often neglected, some of the regions of Eastern Europe, which actually may have been making wine far longer than some of the parts of Western Europe. And then the important emergence of China and the viticultural areas and winemaking areas in China. Continuing on with the slides, we talk a little bit about wine regulations because that, as Christian referred to earlier, that's a real minefield, but very, very important. It's important for winemakers to know the legal terroir, the legal terrain that they're stepping into when they're involving themselves with this product. And then we talk about US wines in general, excluding California. And then since we are UC Davis and we are in California, we jump over and spend a nice lecture about California history and then California wine and wine regions. We end up with a short segment on wine and food pairings. So stay here on this slide for just a minute, because I want to tell you that the nice thing about these classes is that they are asynchronous. You can pop on anytime you want, and you will, because you are located everywhere in the world. I've had every continent represented in almost any given class that I've ever taught. So it's fantastic. The prerequisites for this class are not many. I think anybody can take it. But if you're intending to continue in the wine program, it's nice to have a little biology and chemistry in your pocket before you start this class. So this is a 3-unit lower division UC Davis University level class, and it's challenging. But the nice thing about the exams is that they are all multiple choice online, couple of midterm, couple of quizzes and a final, with frequent opportunities to take practice quizzes that don't count against your grade. So you have a lot of chance to practice taking the tests, and then you'll pounce on the tests and really do well. Our audience for this class is just huge, actually, and it involves not only people in the industry, people wanting to be in the industry. A vast majority of our students are adult learners. We also have people who are sommeliers, wine servers, wine historians, and so forth. So let's go on to the next class, VIT 252. This is again UC Davis University level upper division class. This is one of the series of classes that viticulture enology majors take while they're on campus, and it's virtually the same content, and it's 4 units. And if you'll remember back when you were in college taking a 4-unit class, it's quite demanding. So I just want to prepare you for this. So our target students for this class are people who are in the wine industry, but may have started without a technical background. We also have small commercial operations. We have second career students. We have serious home winemakers. We have just wine lovers and wine collectors taking this class. But I want to warn you. I want to give you like a health warning right up front. Warning: winemaking is an addictive pursuit. It's a highly contagious virus, and the side effects are extreme personal satisfaction of taking an agricultural product and helping to transform it into a beautiful crafted beverage. So once you get this far into the series, I would say that you are probably going to enter the industry. So let's take a look at the next slide, and I want to quickly show you how in-depth the topics are for this actual wine production class. The first week challenges you to think about the concept of wine quality. Having the nuts and bolts and the science all together in your background, in your training is one thing, but what do you consider to be quality in wine? What are you shooting for? And then we will jump into the vineyard, but this is not a how to grow grapes. We have a viticulture class for that. This is looking at grapes from the winemaker's point of view and trying to decide when they are ripe, when they are ready to pick. What kind of sampling do we have to do? And it's a fairly in-depth class. All of our weeks of study, by the way, have numerous assigned readings. They often have videos attached of winemakers talking about the very process that we're studying. In this case, grape sampling. So a very, very robust curriculum. Week 3 is how do you handle that material once you've decided, okay, it's time to pick, bring it in. How do we handle the material at La Recepción, the receiving station at the winery, or the crush pad, as we call it sometimes? And how do we treat that juice? How do we get that must inside? And how do we start this process? Our next slide shows the next 3 weeks. And here again, this is a detailed expansion of that one lecture that you saw in the intro class about unit wine operations. We go through the steps of red wine processing, and then step by step in white wine processing. Of course, there are some differences, but the step by step process is giving you the detail and the backup literature to show what to do each step of the way. And then we're going to delve into the microscopic world and look at the biology of those very, very important microorganisms that really do all of the work at this stage of the game. You have given them starting material. You have set up the conditions to guide their process. But from then on, for the next week or 2 or 3, it's the yeast and sometimes bacteria that are going to do all the work. Not everything always goes right. And the week 6 helps us to track the different types of fermentations, both the good and the questionable, and also spot what can go wrong. And most importantly, try to spot things early on so we can take some corrective action before things get out of hand. And then finally, in week 7, we're going to delve more into bacteria and look at the secondary fermentation, as it's sometimes called, the malolactic fermentation. There's quite a bit that goes into that, and we'll look at management and nutrient requirements and so forth. So what do? We've finished fermenting the wine. We've maybe not finished a malolactic fermentation. So we have to look at what happens next, post-fermentation stability. We're going to be keeping the wine a short time in bottling, or we're going to be keeping the wine months or years and then bottling. So we look at post-fermentation processing and stability, and molecular stability and so forth, how a wine holds up, how do we babysit it, how do we treat it during its months in our winery, in our custody. And we'll take a look at fining how we might have to modify the concentration of the wine if things got out a little bit out of hand. And then week 9 is a lecture on microbial stability. Very, very important. Wine is a fermented beverage, and it's all about microbes. Next slide. So this is our final slide, and just want to talk about some of the mechanics of blending towards the end of the life of the wine in our possession before we get it ready for bottling, and how we set it up and think about bottling and so on and so forth, and various flavor and aroma compounds. So we'll just stay on this last slide for a moment, because I want to talk about course mechanics. As you probably know, if you've taken classes like this, these are our voiceover PowerPoint lectures. We have lesson notes. We have reading assignments. We have a general class participation forum, which you interact with other students. We have discussion assignments and participation assignments. We have frequent chat sessions like this over Zoom. They're like the office hours I used to hold when I was on campus, and they're a lot of fun. We have those at least every other week or more often. I am available constantly by email. for the questions that come up, and they do. And there are numerous other resources to help you along the way. One of the most valuable resources is that you will have access as a student to the American Journal of Enology and Viticulture. You'll have a login key, so you can research most of the required reading and also do topic search on any other wine related or grape related topics that interest you. So thanks for listening. I hope to see you in a future class. These are just huge fun, but you need to set yourself up on a regular schedule. They're demanding, and you certainly will get a really rewarding experience. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thanks, John.
Thanks to all 5 of you. Oh, Jim. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. Just a few things. First of all, John, for you, I have my, you see the VIT 252 binder here, which I refer to frequently. So thank you very much. And yeah, you know, I think from, once again, a student perspective, from someone who really didn't know anything about fermentation sciences, nor about the businesses I talked about earlier, the ability to use terms like Zephonema index and Saccharomyces cerevisiae, Bianus, and one of my favorites, polyphenol oxidase. Those are some of the great benefits of this program, is you can say those mouthful, big words, and actually know what they mean, how they apply, and you can bore people to tears at cocktail parties as you're swirling the wine in the glass. But I think John hit on it, is that you find, if you have a curiosity, an intellectual curiosity and an interest, that this actually absolutely provides the circumstances by which that can blossom. And I think for each of us as students, it runs its own course. Briefly, you know, I got into this because 8 years ago, I bought a house that had a small, neglected, what I call hobby vineyard in the backyard. And after nursing it back to health, having it produce some grapes, buying a book, trying to make some wine, you know, the mistake was, or the problem was, the first year I got lucky and it turned out great. And then the next 3 years I made various forms of witch hazel, rubbing alcohol, cleaning solvents, but decided I enjoyed it enough that, you know, we have this phenomenal resource available to us here at UC Davis, and they make available this content, this very rigorous, robust content in a very accessible way in terms of these courses and in terms of the online accessibility of it. And you know, I'm proud to tell you that as a result of, after having finished the coursework and indulged this hobby, you know, I'm on the board of the Placer County Wine and Grape Growers Association, helping them promote local vineyards and winemakers. I have joined the Sacramento Home Winemakers Club, and my winemaking has made it past the defect-free hurdle, and I'm actually really considering, like, stylistically, what is it I want to produce, and how do the production, the yeast selections, the type of aging that I'm going to go through, and all the way back to the vineyard in terms of when to harvest and what I'm looking for. These things all, I now have this knowledge, and it's just made the interest, it's just grown the interest. And I can't speak enough to the fact that, you know, even though this is not the master's program, and even though this is not, you're sitting in, you know, Chem 194, I think that was the big lecture hall on campus when I went many years ago to Davis. These courses are rigorous, and there's a lot of content. And I think what John said at the end, which is, if you want to be successful in this, you're going to have to spend, I spent a dedicated 1.5 hours to 2 hours a day keeping up with the material, and then at least one day on the weekend, you know, either working on assignments or preparing for tests. And but the reward is there. And I'll tell you, I'm helping people put in vineyards. I also recently answered an ad in the paper to somebody who had a 2-acre vineyard. They were tired of taking care of. They said, you come take care of it. You can have the harvest. And I said, fantastic. And so now I'm out there, assessing the health of the vines and looking at the, here's another term for you, the CMUS water, evapotranspiration water stations, and determining how much water to apply to them. So, I mean, you absolutely will be able to baffle and dazzle your friends with your knowledge, and you're going to get a much deeper, an opportunity to go as deep as you want actually into this industry. So I'm grateful to the instructors. It was a pleasure to answer Katie's email to give some time today. Katie, please make my contact information available to people. I've been answering some questions here. I'm happy to share any of those experiences I've had with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. As a matter of fact, thanks to all 5 of you, Christian, Jim, John, Julie, and Grady. Last but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce the final panelist, and that is Christy Craig, the enrollment coach for CPE, and she'll tell you a little bit about how she might be able to help you, and she'll leave you with her contact information.
I'd just like to pop in here for a second to say something that I think follows up on what Jim says. I imagine a large number of people watching are interested in getting into sort of the artisanal, crafted end of the business with, fine wines that represent their terroir and hopefully can charge quite a bit of money for. I can tell you that both Grady and John have produced exquisite versions of such wines that I have tasted in the past. And this predates my knowing them. I could probably dig up some old tasting notes to prove it. So you're in very good hands on that end as well.
Thank you, Christian.
Yeah, thanks, Christian.
Give it to you, Christy. Christy?
Sound's not coming through for Christy.
Right. Well, we'll share our contact information with you for the OIV program, winemaking certificate program, and I see that Christy's information is on the screen here. She's our enrollment coach, and you can start with her if you have any questions, and she'll be able to assist you. If there are detailed questions, she will forward them to me, and then I'll make contact with you and we'll go from there. This was the summary for the upcoming UC Davis continuing professional education offerings in winemaking. Our contact information, like I said, is shown on the screen here. And feel free to make contact with us anytime. We'll be happy to talk to you. And again, I'd like to thank our panelists today. And thanks for joining us. And I hope this information session was useful to you. And Grady, do you think we have a few minutes to answer some of the questions?
I think we can answer a couple.
Okay, let's see. As a matter of fact, I don't see the questions. Can you see the questions?
I saw a couple of, there was a question as to whether I would share the slides from today, which we can certainly do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Grady?
there's, I guess if anybody would like a copy of the slides, they can just send Katie an email at the address shown there. I also saw a question about the winemaking certificate and its acceptance in the industry. And I can say that we've been doing this for a number of years now, and there is recognition of the certificate graduates out there. We have a number of graduates that are in winemaking positions. It is not the same as a BS in fermentation science on the on-campus program or a master's degree from UC Davis. Our goal really, as we mentioned, was to try to consolidate some of that information and give you a good launching pad into the industry. And we have, it is being recognized as such in the industry.
Hey, Grady, one of the questions that I've seen a couple of times that I've answered in the Q&A section was about the relative applicability of chemistry experience, and I'm a good example of that. My undergraduate degree was actually in computer science, but I started as a physics major, and I had to take a lot of math and physical chemistry. But I want to stress what Grady mentioned is that there's a difference between organic and biological chemistry and physical chemistry. And while I was able to make it through the program with doing a lot of sort of sidebar research, maybe a few Khan Academy classes in processes and trying to get myself up to speed, it will benefit you greatly, availing yourself if you have not already taken and passed successfully organic chemistry in another institution. It would greatly benefit you in this program to have that as a prerequisite, because it is, you know, to impress my professors here, it's a dynamic equilibrium. And it is in understanding how all those things work together and fit together in the processes really does enhance your understanding and your appreciation of what you're learning at the time.
Thank you, Jim. It seems like we just have a minute left, so we will conclude here. And again, thank you for joining us, and your questions will be answered. I will answer each individual question via email. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Katie.
all. Appreciate the time.
Thank you very much. Take
Thank
care.
you. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.